Hi, my name's Ollie Horsfall. I am here with my father today, Robin Horsfall, to discuss the Justice for Northern Ireland Veterans campaign, otherwise known as the Human Rights for Northern Ireland Veterans campaign. On that note, why is it that in recent videos you've been putting out Human Rights for Northern Ireland Veterans when the campaign is called Justice for Northern Ireland Veterans?
Yeah, it was just a change of the campaign slogans, really. We want the human rights for Northern Ireland veterans to be taken into account as well. Sinn Fein, who are very much the opposition to our cause, are constantly calling their people victims. You know, terrorists are victims of soldiers, and they go on about their human rights and they raise money as a human rights organisation. So I thought, well, you know, the actual victims, many of the victims in this situation were the soldiers and the soldiers' families and the soldiers' children that were murdered or injured or seriously wounded in this campaign. And the idea that for some reason soldiers are guilty and all civilians are innocent, well, that's not the case. And so I started to use the slogan human rights for soldiers as well as justice for Northern Ireland.
So wouldn't you say that it's the soldiers that signed up for the risks and not the civilians?
Well, the soldiers went to Northern Ireland to stop two groups of civilians from murdering one another. They went to Northern Ireland to protect the population of Northern Ireland on both sides of the sectarian divide, the Protestants and the Catholics. So they went there as to support the police force. They never went there under martial law. It wasn't a military occupation. They went there to support the police, to help the police do their job. When they first went there, they were seen as the protectors to the Catholic community, who were outnumbered 3-1. Later on, after very bad politics, they eventually came to pass that it was the IRA or the Republican movements that were predominantly the enemy.
Is it not the case then that the legal system seems biased towards terrorists and not the soldiers?
Well, what's happened in recent years is the Good Friday Agreement came around in 1998 and released lots and lots of terrorists from prison, and an arrangement made between Tony Blair and very much the Republican and Protestant movements over in Northern Ireland. But they never wrote anything in for the soldiers. And Sinn Fein have now made it part of their policy to continually claim that soldiers committed atrocities against members of the population over there. All the atrocities in Northern Ireland were committed by terrorists. Soldiers were on the street protecting the people. Occasionally, they got it wrong. Occasionally, they made mistakes. However, those mistakes were made in good faith. The government often says that 90% of the killings were carried out by terrorists and 10% by soldiers. However, the 10% that were carried out by soldiers were almost all lawful killings in self-defence or in defence of the public, whereas the 90% of killings were all murders. Whether they were carried out by Republican or Loyalist terrorists, they were all murders.
So what would you say to critics that would say that you appear to have a bias and that it's not as black and white as all that?
Well, politics is never black and white, and war is never black and white. And although the campaign in Northern Ireland, which lasted 30 years, was never classed as a war, it was actually a campaign where thousands of people died, 6,000 deaths, 50,000 people wounded or injured. And that's the kind of numbers we're talking about, especially in the early years, especially in the early 70s. I mean, the people that we're talking about, that we're protesting about, have been previously investigated and cleared of wrongdoing several times, and yet they're being taken back to court on new trumped-up charges with a claim that there's new and credible evidence. But there isn't new and credible evidence. It's a propaganda campaign. Sinn Fein want to maintain the division between Protestant and Catholic in Northern Ireland because that's where they get their votes. If that division no longer existed, if the people came together as a community in Northern Ireland, Sinn Fein wouldn't get votes, they wouldn't get power. They thrive on division. They thrive on the enmity that they continue between the two communities over there. And that's very, very sad.
So what is Sinn Féin's end game?
Well, their end game is power. It's power politics. And this is part of their power politics game. They don't want a resolution. They don't want truth and reconciliation. They want to continue to persuade the next generation of Catholic people in Northern Ireland that there was some kind of great injustice perpetrated against them by the British military. And it wasn't. The great injustice that was perpetrated against the people of Northern Ireland as a whole was carried out by the terrorists. And they had their terrorists, which were the absolute worst, and those were the people of the Provisional IRA.
What was the point of the Good Friday Agreement if all they're looking for is conflict again?
Well, the point of the Good Friday Agreement was to get their people out of prison and supposedly to draw a line under it once and for all. But they deliberately and pointedly left the military out so that they could then mount a new political campaign against the soldiers and say that there were atrocities committed by soldiers. There weren't atrocities committed by soldiers. There were mistakes committed by soldiers, but there were not atrocities. And some soldiers, 4 soldiers in Northern Ireland, went to prison for murder for the mistakes they made. But no soldier ever went out on the street with the intention of committing murder. Their job was to go out on the street and protect the public from the terrorists. Every time a terrorist went on the street, whether he be Protestant or Catholic, went on the street with the intention of committing murder. No British soldier ever put a bomb in a bar. No British soldier ever put a bomb under somebody's car or murdered a child or put a bomb under a bus full of families. But terrorists did. People have forgotten already how vindictive and cruel the war was over there and how vindictive and cruel these people were to one another.
What was it like for you when you were over there?
Well, it's a long time ago. It's well over 40 years ago. 1975 was the first time I went to Northern Ireland as a young paratrooper. And it was exciting. You were on the streets, you were doing the job you'd been trained to do. And, there were bombs going off, you were getting shot at. There were incidents every day. If you were in a predominantly Catholic Republican area, then you were pretty much hated by everybody that came across you. You were stoned, you were spat on, you were treated with complete contempt, and you were attacked, and people laid bombs to blow us up. In fact, I laid on a bomb on one particular occasion. So, it was looking back, a friend sent me a book recently about my battalion that was in Northern Ireland in 1976-77, which was my second tour. And the amount of incidents he records that went on every single day, the amount of shootings every single day, the amount of punishment shootings that were carried out by terrorists on their own communities, where they would shoot people through the kneecaps and through the elbows, or actually murder them, men and women, and young teenagers. Now, people have forgotten how terrible these people were and what we were up against.